Welcome everyone, thank you for joining today's session on Vertu Motors' successful CDP implementation, where we'll be looking at the good, the bad and the ugly of making a data project like this work. My name is James Gent, I'll be your host. I'm a consultant at Tap CXM. We regularly host these types of sessions, really to give you a chance to hear from the horse's mouth, from the people doing the work, and it's an opportunity to get under the skin of real transformation stories, hear what's worked, what didn't, and take away lessons you can apply in your own business. I'm particularly excited about this one today because we've got two brilliant speakers in Chris and Mathieu, both at the top of their game in their respective industry, and both excellent speakers really. So looking forward to this one. Chris Penny at Vertu Motors will share how they finally cracked their CDP implementation and unlocked some actual ROI from one of these projects. Alongside Chris, we'll hear from Mathieu Lavedrine from the Imagino team with some thoughts on the project from their perspective as well. So a bit of housekeeping before we start. We will record the session and we'll share that with you once the session's finished. And if you've got any questions whilst we're going through, then by all means, please do drop it in the Q&A and we'll make sure we cover those towards the end. But yeah, looking forward to this one. So with that, we'll hand over to Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks, James, for the intro. I'll just share my screen. If I can just get a quick thumbs up that you and James can see it. Matty, can you see the screen? Perfect. Brilliant. My name is Chris Penny. I'm Group Strategic Projects Director at Vertu Motors PLC. We're the third largest motor retailer in the United Kingdom. We sell about 250,000 new and used vehicles a year. We've also got a series of ancillary business doing various things, van leasing, bulbs, motorbikes, all those sort of things. I've titled the presentation "All the King's Horses and All the King's Men Should Have Bought a Composable CDP," which is a Humpty Dumpty reference, and I think that's a pretty solid metaphor for where we were around our customer data around 3 years ago. Definitely not an omelette, just a series of cracked shells and shards smashed all over the floor with a series of people gathered around them trying to put them back together again. But thankfully we are in a better place now, which is why I've been invited to speak on this webinar. So I'll talk more about the good than the bad and the ugly. Just to give you a little bit of a sense of our business, because I think this is really important. These are from our latest results that we published to the city a couple of weeks ago. We generate just shy of £4.8 billion a year in revenue. We're one of the 6 UK car dealer super groups. Our gross margins are fairly slim, as you can see there at 11.2%, but I really want you to pay attention to our adjusted profit before tax, which in the last financial year was 29.3 million. So 4.8 billion in revenue turns into 29.3 million in profit. We have over 7,000 colleagues in the business. We operate from 200 dealerships. We are a very large and complex business to generate quite a thin amount of profit at the end of the year. That is motor retail. We consider ourselves to be one of the top operators, but we operate a very, very fine margin game, so we can't afford to make mistakes. And I don't say that sort of euphemistically. We literally cannot afford to make mistakes. That doesn't mean we don't make them. It just means our room for failure and our room for risk is pretty tight. So when we decide to embark on technology projects, we broadly go in with a huge amount of pressure that they have to succeed. CDP in its sort of 3-4 year journey did not start particularly well. There was money wasted, there was bad procurement, there were significant issues which I'll talk you through, but thankfully we are in a better place now. In terms of our group strategy, I won't go through this in lots and lots of detail, but I just want to draw your attention to the second pillar of our strategic goals, which is the digitalization and cohesive bricks and clicks strategy. So we really are trying to digitalize as much as we can in the business. As a result of the budget in autumn last year, our business took a £10 million additional cost in national insurance contributions, pension contributions, and the impact of the minimum wage. And as the result of our PBT, we just cannot stomach that cost increase. So we are actively trying to find ways where technology can not only increase the efficiency of our people, but also look to reduce our cost base. And that does sometimes mean making some difficult decisions. We have had to slim down our marketing department over the past 6-12 months. but we hope to be able to generate significantly better returns and efficiencies through smaller headcount using the new technologies that we have deployed. This is again another slide from our PLC deck, and you can see how critical our customer data platform is to our business in terms of how we present it to investors in the city, because one of the key things we spoke to them about in May was the deployment of our customer data platform, and we have deployed it. It is live. We are seeing ROI from it, and these aren't the sort of things you can tell porcupines about when they're going in front of investors and become price sensitive and affect your share price. And you can go and read in more detail about this in our annual report, should you choose to, which is investors.vertumotors.com. That's the formalities out of the way. Things get a little bit lighter from here, as you'll probably see from this slide. Excuse me. Our position a few years ago could probably best be described using 3 Fs, 2 of which I will say out loud. The last one I'll leave to your imaginations to figure out. So we were fragmented and we were failing. We had a disconnected set of customer data. We call that a DMS, or dealer management system. Attendees might know that as an ERP. That is not necessarily down to bad operational processes. It's a byproduct of our growth. Vertu has grown through acquisition. So we have bought and purchased a series of businesses since the business was founded back in 2006. And as a result, every time you buy one of those businesses, you inherit all their data. We then move it into our DMS, which is a platform called Keyloop. And that is sat across a series of ERP instances. And to get data out of that and to send out even a single email often took around about 6 hours. It was a lot of manual reports. It was a huge amount of cleansing in platforms like Microsoft Excel, where no data should ever sit. We didn't have any particularly connected journeys, so we were doing one thing for one thing, extracting a series of customers who were due a service in the next week, sending them one email through one platform, no connection to PPC, no connection to social channels, no connection to Search Ads 360, no integrations really at all. It was workable, and we were probably, even at that stage, one of the most advanced and forward-thinking motor retailers in the UK as far as it came to marketing. We also, in a post-GDPR world, had issues with consent and preferences. You're constantly cleansing your data for unfortunate things like deceased customers, customers who are no longer attached to vehicles. That leads to complaints and customer issues, which impact our customer experience, and we do really pride ourselves on our ethics. We know that motor retail doesn't have the best reputation. It's still considered to be a little bit Arthur Daly and Terry Tibbs, and we do really want to set ourselves apart from that legacy of how the motor industry has been perceived. But you can really sum it up in that point on the bottom right-hand corner, which is it was a bit of a mess caused by rapid scale and that inherited legacy. Thankfully, where we find ourselves now is to 3 better Fs, which is fixed and functional foundations. There's so much more we can do, but where we are now is, with the help of partners who I'll come on to discuss, we now have a cloud native data warehouse which runs in AWS Redshift. That takes all of our source data from those disparate DMSs, which we do still need to use, and puts it in a manner where it can be consumed and deployed far more effectively by a customer data platform. That data is accessible now in a meaningful manner to marketing through that's 3 M's that roll off the tongue not particularly well, which now sit in Imagino. So marketing have that view of the data in what we would traditionally call a single customer view, which is one of those buzzwords which is often said and rarely actually realized, but I think we actually do have it now. And another big factor is we've really reduced or pretty much eliminated these silos and interdepartmental frictions. If you think about the goals of a technology-focused data team and the goals of a customer-focused marketing team, they don't always match up, and you can end up with a degree of politics and not necessarily the smoothest running workflows when one hand is consistently blaming the other for a lack of effectiveness. We now have a automation team, which encompasses people from our data platform team, from our development teams, and from our marketing functions, which really work together on CDP as a platform to really give us those true multi-channel journeys. We've already seen significant benefits, so a 3% saving on our PPC spend through suppression via Imagino. abandonment journeys for the first time. So we are actually doing cart abandonment in our online e-commerce, mainly for after sales and service bookings. That is really starting to make a difference. And after sales is a sort of gold jewel in our crown at the moment. It's a huge growth area for the business as car buyers choose to keep their cars for longer, which means they need to get them serviced more often. And that really helps us. We've now got clean data, and that has impact way beyond marketing. It has huge operational benefits for understanding where our renewal position is, how we move forward with leveraging our customers for more sales of more cars, more parts, and more hours. And even in our early state, we are now deep into phase 2 of the rollout as we start to think about bringing our ESP into the same stable as the Imagino customer data platform. We are already seeing ROI well in advance of the cost that we've put in place for these platforms. So everything from here is just a cherry on top of an already pretty well-baked cake. So that gives you a sort of summary view of where we were and where we got to. But I think what's actually more important, or where I can hopefully add value to some attendees, is wherever you are in this journey, whether you haven't started with thinking about a customer data platform yet, whether you've got one that's not quite working as you like, or whether you've got one that's working perfectly and you've just joined this for Schadenfreude reasons, I'll take you through where we went wrong. So in the spirit of Voldemort, I'll start with He Who Must Not Be Named, which was our previous customer data platform provider. I'll give you a small clue, but that's as much as you'll get. It would be unfair to slag off our previous partner because it wasn't all their fault. There was issues on our side as well. But the essential challenge that I realized is we'd already bought that customer data platform just before I joined the business in January 2022. And as many providers of SaaS solutions do, they come in and tell you that everything's going to be easy. Their product is fantastic. It doesn't matter what constraints you have, this product will fix it and will be there to support you all the way. You'll get intensive care, you'll get deployment support, you'll get integration support, blah, 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 blah. The downside of all that story was we ended up with quite an expensive enterprise scale and well-known customer data platform provider. We signed up for a 3-year contract and we never used it. We did not deploy that tool at all. And that wasn't because the tool couldn't have done a job. I actually think we've ended up in a far better place. It was mainly because what we were promised in terms of how that platform could deal with our data turned out not to be true. So the best piece of advice I can give you, and I am going to quote myself here, and I apologize if that sounds incredibly narcissistic, but there is no perfect solution for any problem. Every solution relies on the relationship on both sides of a customer and technology provider or customer and multiple technology provider problem. And you've got to pick your partners incredibly carefully. And I think one of the things, and I'll come on to this a bit later, is when Imagino came into our business in around about July, early August last year, and that's how rapid this journey is, the thing I first detected from them as a CDP provider was these are people who are going to be honest with us. They're going to tell us the hard truths, and they're going to say, we can help, but there's work that you need to do as well. And they recommended to us Tap CXM, who are the hosts of this webinar today, and they understand this world. They've done it at a far larger scale than even our business, and we are pretty big. And we needed to be taught things, and they offered to teach us, as did Imagino. So as a result of that, there's things that I know now that I didn't know before, which I think can really make a difference to anyone who's going on this journey. And particularly if we've got senior leaders on the call today who are relying on teams to deploy some of this work, you'll often get a level of overconfidence bias in those people about what they believe they can achieve on their own. So that's what I'll essentially address on this next slide. So top left, deploying a CDP, it's a new way to think about how you structure and how you deploy your data. And it's a new skill set to most in-house staff. If you've got marketing, data, CRM people in your businesses at the moment, they will be used to doing things a certain way. They will be used to their systems. They will be used to those silos, and they tend to want to keep doing what they have always done, even if that means doing it through the lens of something that looks like, feels like, and smells like a CDP. The first thing that we really needed to do that made a difference was you've got to make it okay not to have all the answers. But it does mean that you need people to come in and help and support you on that journey. You need that external domain expertise, people who've been on this journey, they've been through these deployments, they've worked on these projects, and they've made those mistakes well in advance. We had a CRM team that were used to thinking about CRM journeys through the channel of our current ESP, which is iterable. They were used to how they got the data out of our CRM and how that was validated, and then thinking about data in a relational manner as opposed to just looking at it in rows in Excel was uncomfortable and difficult to adjust to, and everything feels new and everything feels scary. The other thing is that you kind of go in going, I want what I've got but better, when really you've got to rethink it, and I'll come on to that a little bit. You need that solution flexibility. So you need a partner, and this is why I think composable CDPs are great. So you're not sort of forced into a specific set of tools or a constrained way of working. One of the beauties about working with Imagino is if you need something, they can usually build it for you. We're in a slightly advantageous position. Like obviously Imagino can just consume data from a variety of disparate sources and almost become to a point an element of a data warehouse. We have a very robust and clean data warehouse in our Amazon Redshift environment, but we're also in a position where if it is quicker, the time to value is better by doing a direct integration into the CDP. We can now do that. But yeah, just to come back to these points around existing teams, status quo bias is always that biggest problem. You'll always have, well, we've done this email in this way, we've done this retargeting campaign in this way, and the natural thing to do is want to recreate that. But what we've had with the external help of our CDP provider and then Tap as a consultant is this external support that becomes a catalyst for new thinking. Like, well, why are you constraining yourselves to just do that? There's so much more you can do. It's not about rebuilding what you have on new tech, and it's not about doing it to save money. It's about reimagining what the art of the possible is to increase conversion, bring new revenue in through the door. And we are really starting to see the fruits of those labors. However, just to sort of finalize on these lessons in failure, which I seem to be a master at, is it ain't easy. If any tech provider is coming in and saying this, we want you to choose us, we want to partner with you, we want to consult for you, and they tell you that these migrations, however small or large your business is going to be a walk in the park and their technology can solve all. It isn't. It's incredibly difficult. No provider is going to know your systems like you do, and you've really got to do the hard yards early, which really pay you back in the later stages of the project. And the bigger your business is, the bigger the process legacy is, the harder it is. The best analogy I can give is Kevin MacLeod from Grand Designs, which many of you will be familiar with. Like, it's almost like anyone who participates in it has never watched an episode of the program before, but with his quizzical and serious face, he turns up at the start of the episode where a husband and wife couple who will soon be pregnant with many children and living in a caravan say, we're going to build this amazing new house and we're going to do it for £400,000 and everything's going to be really easy. And then Kevin MacLeod frowns, and then chaos ensues as it turns out to be much harder, much more expensive than they expected it to be. And then he turns up at the end with a sort of wry grin on his face and goes, right, so like, how much did it actually cost in the end? And I think Imagino and Tap were our Kevin MacLeod, but we actually got the end part of a Grand Designs episode right at the start, which is like, come on, be honest with yourselves. There's a lot of work you've got to do here. We can go on this journey, but if you're willing to put the effort in, you can get to a really good place at the end of the project. Where we find ourselves right now is Imagino is our CDP. Amazon Redshift is our data warehouse. Iterable is our current ESP doing our email sends. And then in a sort of slightly disconnected way, we are then pushing things out from the CDP into the likes of SA360 to manage our Google and Bing ads, but also Meta for things like our Facebook and Instagram retargeting. And that is a really good place to be and already adding huge value for us. The next steps for us are really exciting. So we are getting to a really cool place. So where we are going over the course of the next few months is a few things. So we're going to bring the send platform inside Imagino using Imagino campaign. That allows you to leverage more of the functionality that's available inside the Imagino platform, and particularly take more advantage of the journeys platform. So you can do more than just emails with it, and we can sort of fully integrate a multi-channel retargeting, recapture, renewal, and customer lifecycle journey. We're also doing a Shopify integration with some of our ancillary businesses that are more typical transactional e-commerce platforms, the likes of our windscreen wipers, bulbs, and automotive parts websites, which are quite powerful profit drivers for us as a group. But actually, what's the most exciting element for me is what we're doing with another platform called Enlighten 360, which is part of the Spoke Phone suite. We have inbound and outbound call centers. We receive thousands and thousands of calls per week that are anything related to booking your car in for a service, coming in to make an appointment because you're due an upgrade on your car, or you've simply found a used vehicle on the likes of a platform like AutoTrader, and do you want to come in and talk to us more about it? One of the beauties of now having that data warehouse and sort of clean customer data platform is with Enlighten 360, which is AI voice transcription and analysis. That Enlighten 360 platform, we are going to store all those transcripts and all those AI signals around customer intent in the data warehouse, and therefore in Imagino, and we'll be able to use some of those behavioral signals and those call transcripts to really inform our customer marketing and be able to reach customers at the right intent point in the journey. And we'll also start to use it to tag, understand, and present more personal content through our website. Our website hasn't had a big overhaul in a while. We have got the Imagino tagging already integrated on the current platform, but we are currently in process of rebuilding that on a headless CMS through a company called HighGraph. And that is going to really help us take the next sort of generational leap in our customer journey. So just to summarize, we're nowhere near where we want to be, but we're the furthest along that we've ever been. We believe there's a path for us being the most effective marketing engine in the automotive industry, and we believe that'll help us reap the profitability and customer service rewards that come alongside that. We expect that it will never be a completed journey because there'll always be new tools, and this new world of AI is bringing so many opportunities to make mistakes but also see successes and return on investment stories. But for where we are right now compared to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, we've seen a dimensional shift of how we deploy data at Vertu Motors PLC. And I just want to take an opportunity to thank the Imagino and Tap team who've supported us all the way through on that journey. And that's it from me. So I'm going to pass back to James, who I think will hand over to Mr. Lavedrine.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. That was really good, really insightful. And yeah, Mathieu, did you want to add a few comments from the Imagino team?
Yeah, no, I really like the grand design analogy actually, because everyone starts with the best intentions. That things are going to be easy, it's sunny outside, and it's going to be quick, and then reality, hits a fan, and it's always more complicated, right? You haven't planned for external factors, and then people get tired, and you lose momentum, etc. So it's a very good analogy. I think that the first, probably the first reason why that happened is there's 3 of us here, and I don't know the automotive industry as well as you guys do, or any of your teams do. We're very good at technology, and I could spend 10 minutes telling you about how great the tool is. Great. Okay, the tool is great, but there's 3 parties on this call today, and that's really reflects the project as well. Like, you guys know your business very well, but you haven't deployed hundreds of CDPs. We know our technologies, but we don't run all of the projects. But Tap run, a lot of projects on a lot of different technologies, and they've seen a lot of different scenarios, and they can preempt the things that are going to break or the things that are important. But I think that was the first point that really I think come through your your summary of what's happened is that it's a, you know your business, we've got the technology, Tap has the expertise. I don't know if you agree, Chris, but I think everyone brought kind of their skill set to the table, and we managed to get things moving because of that. Is that fair?
Incredibly fair.
Right. I think the second point on the project as well was things were not perfect, but again, probably to the composable approach, I think we've managed to leverage quite well what was available. I think you've said your AWS data warehouse is solid. It was not perfect, and we had to change things, etc. But through that process, actually, it was an 80-20. We could have said it's all rubbish, use our tool, we're going to rebuild everything, and we'd have lost a huge amount of time. Instead, I think we looked at it and we worked with the team, and you've got a lot of good people who are like, oh, okay, we can change this, change that. And we just had to change the last 20%, which took it from not yet usable to actually really well suited to what needed to happen. And I think that's probably for me a good lesson is it's never perfect, but actually if we look at what's available, what can we reuse, and the composable approach I think is very well suited to that. If you go into a business like yours and you say everything you've done is not good enough, you're going to upset a lot of people. You're not going to make friend with IT. You're not going to make friend with everyone who's been working on this project and doing their best. And B, you're going to redo things that were actually okay. So I think that worked well. It took us a little while to get into that frame of mind, but eventually I think that was a good approach.
Yeah, I think data is part of an overall operational business. It's not all about CRM and it's not all about marketing. And our data was through the data warehouse project. As you've said, Matty, we've got it to a really, really good place. But even before that, it was usable by around about 6,940 employees. It just wasn't usable by the 60 that needed to do marketing stuff with it. So from an operational perspective, and again, it's difficult to come into a business and say all your data is rubbish when you're generating close to £5 billion a year of revenue out of it. But it's not to say there aren't huge opportunities by sort of polishing up that final 20%, as you said, and we are in a much better place than I think we ever imagined as a result of particularly your support, actually, Matty. I know that we put you through some sleepless nights over the past 9 months, and we do appreciate it.
There is a relevant question on that, actually, just in the chat. So one of the questions is, what did data readiness really mean for your business, and how did you assess it? So you're able to go into a bit more detail on that, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I half answered it with that sort of little interlude between myself and Matty, is that data readiness, in my opinion, and this sounds incredibly obvious, is can you do what you need to do with your data when you want to do it, in the way you want to do it, for the right return on investment and right measurement. And again, in 85-90% of cases, for selling a vehicle, for onboarding a new employee, for going through a complaints process, for cybersecurity, in many ways we were functional. However, where we had legacy was we had I wouldn't say old school because that would be disparaging to the people involved in that team. We couldn't leverage the power of all the marketing channels we had if it 6 hours to manually extract a list of customers, load them into an email platform, and send a group of customers a campaign. Like, there will be people, I'm sure, on this call far further forward, if they're an e-commerce business, that are doing retargeting via SMS, WhatsApp, following people around the internet with pixels on Facebook. And that's just scratching the surface. And we were playing at that, but it was highly human capital intensive. And for me, data readiness is, can you do the things you need to do with the lightest possible human touch and the lightest amount of human time? And we are not there, but we are as close as we have ever been.
Yeah, James, and I think this is probably an issue that many marketing teams face, is the fact that it can technically be done is not enough. Is, if you have a good idea for a campaign tomorrow, but it takes you a week or 2 weeks to get that extra field from this other system, they're just not even going to try it because they know that process is too slow. And I think that that's kind of where it breaks down and it creates a disconnect. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the CRM team is able to go in the tool, do a quick count themselves. I mean, actually, this idea's got leg. We've got the data, we've got enough people we can target, and we're talking about the same type of content. It was actually my third point, Chris, on the little gap between tech and business is people nearly don't speak the same language. We had a few conversations about real time and what real time means for different people, and sometimes, with the best of intention, people are like, yeah, we will just pull that data from here in real time, not realizing that it might be a terabytes of data, and pulling it real time is just, if it's feasible, it's not sensible from a cost or a workload perspective. And I think, there was a lot lost in translation in some of those discussions, and then we spend a bit of time talking about the same, realigning the language.
Yeah, I think we've got to be super honest with ourselves, because I wouldn't say I was a cynic, but I am sort of very critical of buzzword bingo. And I think when you hear phrases like real time, I think sometimes a stakeholder will say it and raise it as a requirement. And I'm talking about within our business, because it sounds like a good thing to say. Mm-hmm. But you've got to look at the problem and you've got to look at the requirement. And I think that it's a genuine challenge. People do want to feel like they're adding value. They want to sound clever. And sometimes the hardest thing to do, particularly when you're working with external partners, is no one wants to jump onto those daily stand-ups and feel like they don't know. And I think one of the best things we did quite early in the project, Matty, is we sort of we created that environment where it was okay for people to feel a little bit stupid. And I think in the early days, where everyone was supposed to feel like they had all the answers and was supposed to come fully prepared, fully understood, with no unknown unknowns, that's where things go horribly wrong, because everyone's got their guard up. And I think that's one of the ways the project went really well, just creating that freedom to be idiots for a little bit of time each day.
Yeah. Asking a silly question is always a good. It's always a good start.
That leads quite nicely onto another question we've got actually around team. So it says, Chris, could you tell us more about the new automation team you set up? What roles, yep. Which reporting line department, what skill sets, etc.?
Oh, interesting one. So we now have old CRM, which isn't called that. So we've got our original CRM function, which is doing our legacy email sends. They are now sat in a distinct function, but we will re-platform those sends into Imagino over the course of the next 3-4 months. That is the expectation. The new marketing automation team sits as a reporting line into marketing. We've brought in a new really, really senior skill set head, a woman called Natalina Sutherland, who joined us from another automotive dealer group called Lookers, who were recently bought out by an American business, and they sort of slimmed down their technology function. So she was a massive win to bring her into the business. And she now sits over quite a small function. There's only 4 people in it, but you've got a marketing data analyst. You've got 2 sort of CDP product heads, I would call them. I won't go into their specific titles. You've then got Natalina, and then sort of sat as a connected spoke. You've then got SQL developers, delivery leads, and then even myself as projects director and Bruce, the CTO, sat in that hub because it's such a strategic focus for us as a business. So it's not about necessarily creating a separate business function. It still sits technically under a marketing hierarchy, but it's a swarm of dedicated resource, so that what we realized is if a marketing team write a brief around something to do with marketing automation and then throw that grenade over the fence into a group of data analysts and SQL developers, there is absolutely zero context. So your time to value is way longer than it should be, and there's very disconnected methodologies into how to get to the outcome. So what we make sure we do now is there are no marketing calls around CDP automation. There are no data calls around CDP automation. There are CDP meetings that include that project team of stakeholders in this new world where you've got everyone fully understanding exactly what's going on. And that sometimes means having data architects listen to very, very marketing heavy calls where they aren't necessarily adding a huge amount of value, but they are listening, consuming, and understanding, so that when they go and lay SQL code in the data warehouse that eventually flows through into the CDP, your chances of executing right first time are far, far higher because you've broken down the walls between those silos.
Yeah, so it's very good point as well, which like if people don't understand why they're building something, it's very likely it's going to go wrong. And I think, that there's a few cases like this where the end game of how the data was going to be used wasn't clear. So obviously people who prepare the data or make it available can't make it right because they don't know which format it needs to be or like how to dedupe it, etc. And that's kind of a very generic advice, but asking why things are done at the beginning, we were talking about real time. It's like, okay, why do you need it real time? It's not about whether it can be done or not. Yes, it can be done. Anything can be done. But why do you need it? And let's avoid spending days sorting something out when actually you look at the use case, you look at how the data is going to be used. Actually, that's not going to make a difference. So let's drop this, save some time, focus our energy somewhere else. So yeah, asking why and explaining the context to the different sides of the business, I think that's a very valuable lesson for everyone.
For sure.
And just in terms of asking the right questions, so a couple of questions on the same theme, I think, really. But at the start of the project, there's a couple of questions trying to understand what were the business outcomes you were looking to achieve with the CDP and how did that shift over time? And then in parallel to that, how did you justify the investment, the leadership in the second round of going through this process?
In attempt number 2.
Yeah, number 2.
So we've got a very technically minded and detailed chief executive officer. His name is Robert Forrester. I've never worked for anyone who was so all over the micro of each business department, including marketing. I think it's incredibly rare for someone to be so close to that world. And I think it was actually Robert who came to our marketing team and went, I've been to a series, and this is before I joined the business, I've been to a series of conferences, I've spoken to a number of other businesses. I believe that we need to move in a CDP direction. So it wasn't necessarily a sell, and this is phase 1 with our original provider. It wasn't a sell into the C-suite. It was more C-suite mandating down that there's an opportunity here and it needs to be followed. Where that got more complex is when it didn't work. So in terms of the second attempt, it wasn't necessarily justifying the second round of investment. It was justifying the first round of investment and why we saw no value from it, or nowhere near the value we should have done. But given we had the data architecture projects running in parallel, that uncovered all the key areas of why the first phase of the CDP was never really going to work. So there was an awful lot of rope given to loop back round to your first question, as long as there is this universal belief that having that connected view of your customer data is you're going to be able to leverage results. So when Robert's thinking about investment in technology, he wants to see that time to value really quickly. He's not going to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on a piece of technology and go, we're going to see return on investment in 2-3 years. He wants to see return on investment right now. So in the second phase, I think we committed to contract last August. Robert, the Chief Executive Officer, gave us 4 key objectives which had to be delivered by Christmas Eve. So that deployment timeline was pretty tight. So we had 4 key use cases to achieve, one of which was PPC suppression, which on its own we believed could pay for the platform costs. So delivering that use case could make it cost neutral. We spend into the 5 figures per day on Google PPC spend. So even single digit percentage numbers on that saving are useful in terms of contributing to the cost of the CDP platform. And we then wanted to get into much more personalized and better targeted comms. And how we decided to do that was starting to do abandonment journeys. So we did abandonment journeys for people who go through to reserve a vehicle on our website for £99. We did abandonment journeys, and the most successful ones have actually been in our after sales world. So someone who comes to our website to try and book a service gets halfway through that booking journey and drops out. By retargeting those customers, which was one of the core CDP objectives, I have been shocked by the growth in after sales revenue in that area. And I guess looking back on it, it makes a lot of sense. No one probably enjoys going onto a website to book their car in for a service, spending money on something because they have to. It's not like I get retargeted when I go and add a pair of Nike trainers to my basket, but then 5 minutes later when I get the thing going, oh, you forgot to check out, you totally expect that. I don't think it probably happens too often, but if you really wanted a pair of Nike trainers, they're a desire purchase, you're probably going to go back and buy them anyway. But if you've gone halfway through a service booking and dropped out, you might forget for another 3 months. You might go to a competitor and book in. Someone else in the meantime might have rung you because they hold your customer data. They know when your MOT is due, and they've taken you out of the market. So the original use cases were incredibly basic, but there were things that we knew were going to add value. What we've now uncovered are, again, the AI opportunities through voice transcripts, the opportunities through simpler, much more multifaceted and connected journeys. I actually believe, even though the platform is well paying for itself and probably providing a 5-to-1 ROI already, I think we're only scratching the surface of what can be delivered when we're a further year down the line.
It's good to hear. And I completely relate to the fact that when I need a new pair of Nike trainers, I don't need any reminders.
Probably do about your car servicing.
Yes, that's much more likely. It's one thing. Sorry, James, go ahead. No, you mentioned the time to value, Chris, and I think also that's pretty important to us. I used to work for one of the big marketing cloud vendors, which I will not name either. And they, on paper, they've got everything and they're massive and they can do anything you want. In practice, all those projects are taking years. And I think the world we live in is not very well suited for projects that take several years to be delivered. And I think again the approach of composable, the approach of being very focused with the first use cases. We only started with the 3 use cases, and it was hard enough. There was plenty of hurdle just with the 3, but at least we got there. Just in time for the end of last year. And if we tried to do something too big, we probably would have failed. So I think there's a bit of mix of agile approach. The fact that software it's not just a license. Like you need to bring the team and then focus on the right thing that are going to make a difference. And it's been a great. It's great, not surprise. I was going to say to see the results, but a relief maybe. That's.
And when you're in it, you don't celebrate it as much as you should. But earlier this year, I was meeting with some other motor retailers at a conference in the south of England, and I was speaking to someone I've known quite well from my time in my previous role, and he gave me quite a good soundbite where he said, "I'm 5 years into a 3-year data migration project." And I was like, well, that's not where I wanted to be.
Makes you feel better, right?
Yeah, makes you feel a little bit better, yeah. It's really easy to be self-critical. It's a lonely world sometimes.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point. I think when we do these implementation projects, there's always that advice, which is choose something simple that proves the platform end to end, that everyone can organize themselves around and just really get that momentum going so you can then deliver on top of that. I think there's always a temptation to try and put in something that's too complex early on because people want to prove that they can do all the bells and whistles, where really it's just get those fundamentals right from the outset and build upon that. So yeah, I would definitely echo that sentiment. Cool. So,
And I think
another
James
question.
is, sorry. Go ahead,
I
James.
was going to say, yeah. So we've got a few more questions. The next one is, were there any silos you chose not to break down, and why?
Oh, great question. I guess this requires a sort of deeper insight into how my mind thinks about structuring businesses and structuring teams. So I've always been a big proponent of the Spotify model, although we don't use it in the same way they do in sort of the squads and tribes model or even matrix management. But I think about things in two ways. I think about people management and I think about problem management. And that requires people organization in very, very different ways that feels uncomfortable at first, but better longer term. So if I think about the general hierarchy of who people report into and who does their one-to-ones and who does their expenses and who's looking after their career path, that can all stay exactly how it is. Marketing people can report into marketing people, data people can report into data people, external consultants can be external consultants. But the way I think about it is when you've got a problem and a goal, which is we believe we can do better with customer data. We want to be better with customer data. We want to achieve these things. We want better personalized comms. We want to take some cost out of the business. We want to be on the bleeding edge of what's possible. You've got to coalesce a group of people together, regardless of which technical vertical silo they sit in, and get them around a problem passionately. And then those barriers and silos don't matter because you're thinking about them in a very different way. And I think I touched on this earlier on the call, is that the secret thing is you can't have a meeting about data architecture and then a meeting about email templates and then a meeting about journeys. You've got to have meetings around CDP automation, and all the stakeholders have got to get involved and they've got to be fully invested in that connected horizontal project for the period that they are in it or the time that they are on that call, and then they can quite happily go back to the other areas that they might be working on. But we really do coach for little and often communication, and when you're in, you're in. And if you're not in, just don't turn up to the meeting, don't be there, but you just won't be part of the project. And it's quite easy running project teams that are such high focus all the way up to the C-suite of the business, because I'm not shy of people who want to be connected to it because they know it's high focus, high value, and you've got a potential to sort of get a feather in your cap or a medal around your neck in the metaphorical sense. But keeping people organized in that manner is still a challenge, but it's far, far easier than people passing a hot potato around various different business departments and then get into an inconsistent or incorrect outcome. Yeah,
And
no
I think,
silence.
Chris, having been on the other side of that, it felt, the daily stand-up, 30 minutes in the morning, every day felt over the top at the beginning. I was like, what are we going to talk about every day? Like, surely, we need to do stuff, not just talk. But actually, there was so many decisions to be made, and it accelerated the pace at which we went through those. Like this legal implication of like, okay, legal, who can do this? And it was like, the 5 to 10 of us on the call every day, and we're like, yeah, I'll take this one, and so the pace of iteration was probably 5 times higher than if we'd met once a week. And then people would have sat on those issues for a week or
for sure.
send
long
chains of emails.
What always surprises me is where the solutions end up coming from. And that's really come to the fore, particularly in phase 2 of the project, as we've started to get into ESP migration. But I think people condition themselves to their role. So I think if you're sat there as a senior architect in a data team, you don't see yourself as a marketer. But you then expose yourself to marketing problems and you start to understand that everyone's really a marketer and that you do have value that you can add in that space. And had we not had a Rob Calvert from the data team in a meeting and they could have offered a solution to a marketing problem that they thought was never connected to them, but they've gone, well, why don't you think about it in this way? And it opens the eyes to those marketing stakeholders. You'll be amazed how getting that different perspective in that connected, really tight-knit group can make a difference, as long as you create that opportunity where it's okay to just speak up and potentially say stupid things.
Yeah, and I think that's something you made okay as well is when there were compromises to be made, because you're there to say no, that's fine. It's not perfect, but that will get us there. So let's just simplify slightly this little point, move on to the next one, and yeah, it did help the pace of change and the pace of iteration, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. Another question for you, Chris. So, if someone's at the start of this journey, what would be the advice that you'd give to other organisations who might be in a similar boat in terms of trying to understand if they're ready internally, the process to go through, choosing the right tech? Can you just talk a bit about the advice you would give to anyone who's going to be going on a similar journey?
Do the hard yards really early and do them harder than you think you ever need to. And this is all way before you choose a partner. The single best learning is go fast late, go really slow early. And if I had my time over again, and this goes back to making the mistakes with our first CDP provider, we would not have chosen them. We would have spent a lot more time looking inwardly and looking into the mirror and not just drinking the Kool-Aid that was being fed to us. Because look, in 2025, in a world of ChatGPT, in a world of OpenAI, every pitch deck from every SaaS provider is going to be broadly the same. They're all grammatically correct. They're all perfect. They all spin a yarn better than the best marketers can. So it is difficult to choose. The whole, and I apologize for using choice language on the webinar, but the don't be a dick test is a very, very valid one. And I think as you go through these projects, they are complex. You won't have all the answers at the start, but if we'd have chosen on culture rather than promise right at the beginning, we'd have made better natural choices. Like one of the things is, like, look, I've not made any illusions about the fact that it's been a very, very difficult journey to get to where we've got to, but that journey is made far, far easier when you're working with cool people that are tolerant. And because we make mistakes, I'm sure Imagino have made mistakes along the way. Tap have been there to mediate. But the thing about it all is I've never felt like I've not been working with people who all had the best intentions and genuinely wanted to help and support. And you've got to find a partner and you've got to choose them on really, really good culture and values fit. And then most of the other stuff can be worked out. If you choose the CDP provider you want to work with based on how big their table is, and everyone's got a table, and how many boxes are ticked in their table versus all the crosses of their competitors, it is highly likely to go incredibly wrong. You've got to get these partners, you've got to get it down to 3 choices through your RFP process. You've got to get them in a room, you've got to go, can I work with these people hours a day for multiple months to get to an outcome? And if the answer to that question is no, do not choose them. Mm-hmm. The other thing is don't assume your data is as bad as you think it is. If you don't think you're ready to start, if you think you're not ready to start, you've probably reached the wrong conclusion. I don't think there's a bad time to start your CDP journey. It's just how quickly you realize the outcome might be a slightly longer time window. But trying to figure it all out yourself with all that inherent legacy and all that inherent status quo bias actually makes the change faster. So I know it sounds cliche, but there's no better time to start than now, even if actually activating the CDP platform might be 6 months, 12 months down the line. It's better to work with a partner who can help you go, well, you are here, you're getting these results now, you want to be here, how can we help you structure your data in a platform in a manner that allows you to unlock all that customer value that you believe is there, or you wouldn't be talking to people like are on this call and the other partners and people that are available in the market. But choose the people carefully, the products I think are broadly all okay.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think there's, probably your first project that didn't work. The technology might have been capable of doing what you needed, but they didn't really care, right? They sold a license, they moved on, and who cares? So exactly. I think if I can add to your point, Chris, is, we did a POC. That's fine. If you're not sure about the value, if you're not sure that the product can do it, running a proof of concept over 3 months, like short term, you're going to get to a conclusion very quickly. Like Chris mentioned, can you work with those people? Is a good intention on both sides? Because all incentives will be aligned at that point. Is that going somewhere? And then, those 3 months will be very productive. or not. And then you've only lost a bit of time, but at least you've not lost 3 years of commitment into the wrong platform.
Yeah.
So, sorry for.
Still hurts, Matthew. It still hurts.
It still hurts. Still hurts.
Great stuff. Well, yeah, thank you both for your insights. That was very useful. We've gone through the questions in the chat, so thank you everyone for adding those questions. Thank you for joining, and we hope you're leaving with some good insights from both Chris and Matthew today on these types of projects. We will share the recording after today's session, and also to note that the next TAP event will be on the 10th of July, which is also CDP focused. Actually, seems to be a bit of a theme at the moment. So we'll be doing an event going through a few different CDP vendor options. So look out for details on that. But otherwise, yeah, thank you again, Chris and Matthew. Really appreciate your time. I know you're both busy and lots of projects ongoing. So, taking time out of your day is much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Have a lovely day, everyone. Speak soon. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.